ANCSA, the Alaska Native Claims Settlement Act, was the vehicle chosen by Congress to acknowledge the Aboriginal land rights of Alaska Natives that had been lost. And with ANCSA, we were entitled to a selection of lands within our traditional areas that were traditional interest, traditional use, and we were given some compensation for lost rights. It was really a vehicle chosen by Congress to allow for self, the preservation of ourselves as a culture, as a people.
Rather than a reservation system that's owned by the government and held in trust by the government, Native corporations actually own land, they own assets, and they're able to utilize those for the benefits of its shareholders. So it creates a much more dynamic environment than often what you see in reservations in terms of a stagnant economy with very little opportunity.
This is a new model that was created in the early 70s and had never been done before. And it is a land claim issue, and it was set up with a corporate model. Well, you have to imagine that the Native people at the time, they were not ready to operate these corporations on a corporate model. We're actually still learning how to do this, and in fact it's taken 25 years to get us where we are starting to have people in the finance departments and CEOs and any number of the other departments that are involved in these corporations.
We became the managers of the lands we received as part of the settlement, and the money that the government gave us. And our purpose was to take those resources and invest, develop natural resources off our lands, and through that process provide benefits, dividends to our shareholders.
The intent of the corporations is to become an economic development model for the Native peoples, because most of the people do live in remote rural areas. In our region, that there are 7 tribes, 4 of which are in remote communities that are only accessible by boat or plane. And these are small villages, Tutitlik, Chiniga, and so forth. So the corporation itself is meant to provide jobs, meant to provide dividends, this type of thing, educational opportunities.
The 8A program overall was intended to provide opportunities for disadvantaged people. And Alaska Natives are, in fact, disadvantaged people. And the benefits of Alaska Native corporations' involvement in the 8A program are our beneficiaries are our shareholders. And in our case, in Nana's case, the majority of our shareholders are still living a very traditional lifestyle in a region that has very limited access, very minimal infrastructure, and so the avenue that is available for us through the 8A program allows us to go off and strive to be successful in business and bring the benefits of our business activity back to our owners, the shareholders of the Alaska Native Corporation.
There's misunderstandings or a lack of knowledge completely about how the 8A works. And so people are only hearing the side that, well, Alaskans have this great advantage. And so they choose to use that either for political reasons or just misinterpret how the program really impacts all of us. The typical 8A company, which is owned by individual entrepreneurs or family groups, in other words, a small number of owners, they have a limitation on the size of contracts that they can receive of sole source. Typically that's $3 million. In some cases that's construction type contracts, it can go up to $5 million, but there is that ceiling. ANSCA corporations don't have that ceiling, but what we make off of those contracts supports thousands of shareholders. Cognac, as I mentioned, about 3,500, but we have other regional corporations with over 16,000. And so that's why the program was designed this way. It's the same with the tribal corporations in the lower 48. And so if you look at it from the standpoint of the number of people we support, how many owners we have in the business, I think it's totally fair. That's not to say that maybe those smaller disadvantaged companies aren't due to have their ceilings increased somewhat, but it certainly isn't a reason to change the program as it applies to us.
You have to think about what happened to Alaska Natives. Congress passed a law that forced them into these corporations. They're represented by the corporations. It's what we call a forced aggregation rule. They didn't have a vote in it, they were just put there. Their opportunities in the small business world in Alaska on federal contracting is just about non-existent in most of the areas. So therefore, if you apply what we call the aggregation rule in representing 7,000 or 10,000 Alaska Natives, there shouldn't be a cap on it of what they can do in government contracting. And I think early on, you know, some of the rules maybe not clearly understood and maybe weren't followed to a T. I think that the corporations have learned what it means to make sure that they're above board and they don't put out phony contracts or have phony management agreements. There was probably some of that went on early on, but I think that's changed substantially since the early days of the 8A programs, and people are very business-minded about it.
There have been a number of concerns raised about ANCs participating in the 8A program and in government contracting generally, whether they're somehow receiving an unfair benefit or an unfair number of contracts. And I think the misinformation that has gone out in the media has really hurt our story because our side of the story has not gotten out. And I think it's important to realize that Native American contracting is a very small piece of the overall 8A contracting pie. But the benefits from those same revenues benefit not individual disadvantaged individuals, but individual shareholders. So the benefits that flow through ANC companies benefit many more.
What 8A has added an element of additional revenue for these corporations that allow for more contributions into the nonprofit areas where people do need the help, and mainly in education.
You know, on one hand, we're providing money to help our shareholders go to school to develop skills, and that at the same time we're building corporations that create opportunity for them, just as for me. Although I really see that, you know, it's a fairly long cycle. This isn't something that can take place in the period of a year or two. We've been providing scholarships for, you know, the past decade or more, and we're just now starting to see, you know, skilled professionals that have been given the opportunity to gain experience and then to be able to contribute in a valuable way to our 8A subsidiaries. On one hand, we're talking about people that are going to a university and learning an advanced, you know, skill and moving off to where we might have a contract. But we have a large base of our shareholders that you know, like the native lifestyle, who grew up in a village and have no intention of ever leaving that village. And I see that the 8A program is important there as well because it creates an opportunity to pay a dividend. And you know, while the dividends when you compare it to someone's annual salary, it may not seem like a whole lot. But when you're living a subsistence lifestyle in a rural village, even a few hundred or a few $1,000s a year can make a big difference in their ability to maintain a quality of life out in these rural areas.
For every job that we're able to complete successfully inside of this structure, it benefits our people in many different ways. I'm an excellent example of how those benefits translate. Not only were the monetary benefits of participating in the program go to support the education foundation that allowed me and supported me financially through college, but has also opened up employment opportunities. I currently manage an 8A construction company for Arctic Slope Regional Corporation. And we have a number of different opportunities throughout the country and even jobs internationally. We've been able to marry up a particular opportunity with what we call the FPSP project. These jobs are very short in duration, so they're anywhere from a week to 3 weeks long. And they're always outgoing, they're throughout the world, there's a lot of travel involved, but it gives our craftsmen the opportunity to pick and choose when and where they go so that they can continue to participate and contribute in the subsistence economy. That's something that has not always been afforded given the economies of our communities being so small and not having that kind of freedom for employment.
Looking over the 30 years or 35 years since ANCSA passed, there's been a tremendous amount that the corporations have been able to do in making changes in Alaska Natives' lives. And those being, again, both social and economic changes where people have the ability to get jobs through Native corporations. The social side, if you look at the health, the improvement in health alone, today the health nonprofits that are out there are pretty much on their own. They stand alone and they're doing very well, and they cover most of Alaska. Social programs in job placement, the housing programs that go on today, the housing authorities that have been put in place. Most of those were formed by and through ANCSA corporations as nonprofits.
We welcome that investigation because I think it allows for a full open book look at this. What has troubled me is I believe there have been some very irresponsible allegations made about misuse of the 8A program by Alaska Native corporations, which is absolutely not true. We have worked very hard to establish very credible businesses delivering value service to the federal government through the 8A vehicle. Where 8A vehicle was established for very legitimate reasons, and Alaska Natives' ability to participate in that program is very much consistent with the intent of Congress when it established the 8A program. And so for me and for NANA, we welcome that investigation because we believe it'll expose the truth.
I think in regard to any investigation or review of the corporations, that I would say I would welcome any kind of review in that I'm very proud of our corporation, both our shareholder base, our board of directors. I think we have an excellent board of directors that are working very hard and really care about the people.
I think that the program works fine. I think that the ANC's involvement in the program and success is something new, so it's caught people's attention. They aren't well informed on the situation, and I think that that's our job, is to inform and continue to operate successfully and within the boundaries of the program. And eventually I'm hoping that not only will the criticisms go away, but in fact the contractors and Congress will end up strongly supporting the program, because we, given the opportunity, we can perform as well as anybody else.
It hasn't been any burden at all. It's just like another member of the family.
From all the testimonies from the different rural families that are hosting these urban exchange students, the Rose Urban Rural Exchange Program is not only having a positive effect on the rural and urban exchange students who are participating, but also on the host parents, families, and communities these young people are visiting.
Being a host, how to be a host, I found that I experienced that I challenged other people that wanted to experience being as a host parent. It's fun.
I just encourage families from villages out here to participate in the program. Show them what village life is like.
So I think it's good for kids to be able to experience different lifestyles. Even though the differences aren't that great, there are some differences. And I think, again, just seeing that there's more similarities than differences.
The next time an opportunity arises for a family in Russian Mission to host an exchange student, that these other high school kids and junior high kids are going to volunteer their parents to bring the student to their house.
I guess she wanted to stay more, but her time was ready for her to go back home, because she's got her own parents, but we're her second parents.
For more information on the Rose Urban Rural Exchange Program, contact the Alaska Humanities Forum, toll-free voicemail at 1-888-687-6865 or call 907-272-5301.
There are some people in this world you just never forget. For one reason or the other, Eddie Hoffman was one of those people. He was a very special man. In fact, he's got a senior center named after him, and for good reason. This man had an impact on everyone and everywhere he met them. He was a fabulous person. Let's visit the Eddie Hoffman Senior Center in Bethel, Alaska.
You four people and sitting up there, you think you know it all. Point of order, my eye. You don't say that to me.
He was born and raised in this area, became a advocate for Native people in the region. He was not bashful to bawl out anybody when it came to trying to get things corrected or done right the first time on problems for people in Alaska, particularly rural Alaska.
I'm not finished with you yet. Yeah, I'm not finished with you. I see you gave a few remarks a while ago, which you should have kept your mouth shut.
He was known for the finger, which is pointing at whomever was on his hot seat of being straightened out. Those are his terms, to straighten out.
His name was Eddie Hoffman, the traditional chief of Bethel. But to the people of the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta, he will always be remembered as a fighter, a man who often went to battle for the native people of the region and the native people of Alaska. He was the kind of man who knew right from wrong and was never afraid to take a stand for what he believed in, his people, the Yupik and Chupik people of Alaska.
Since I was born and raised here in this town, then I know him all my growing up life as the oil man. He was the owner of Hoffman Fuel Company, which still continues today with his family. And he was a loud little guy.
Today, Eddie Hoffman is remembered in the minds of those who admired him and in the minds of those who feared him. But on a daily basis, Hoffman is remembered by the many fortunate people who come to the Eddie Hoffman Senior Center for fellowship and a warm meal. It's not a congregate living where many senior citizens live together day by day. It's more like a senior citizen recreation center, a place where elders come each day for a hot meal, activities galore, and an opportunity to be chauffeured around to get those errands done and bills paid. It's all part of the Nutrition Transportation Services program.
The importance of the Eddie Hoffman Senior Center comes through in the happiness that I see in the elders' faces and eyes when they're being here together, enjoying themselves. As you look around in here, we have photo albums that they could look through for enjoyment purposes. Lots of puzzles. They love to do puzzles. And as you may know, working puzzles is one way of keeping older brains working and functioning properly. So you remember that, okay?
One thing that seems to bring a little happiness to Carrie Anvil is her favorite pastime, music.
My daddy used to be lay pastor in Mariban Church, and so when they build a church in Nunatak, where I live, they take our organs to the church and they move them from our house to the church because there's no organ in there. By those we learned. This is the favorite of the people. Praise Him, Lord, for He is good. Praise to our God to sing, for it is pleasant to praise. It is a comfort.
And although this may be the people's favorite song, the elders' favorite time of the day seems to be the trips to the post office and stores.
Okay, here we go.
from the post office, it's off to the grocery store for a little grocery gallivanting. Bernard Sam is the Nutrition Transportation Services driver for the Eddie Hoffman Senior Center. Bernard's mornings begin delivering around 40 meals a day to elders who prefer to stay at home. For Bernard, it's more than a job. Bernard enjoys spending his time with the elders, helping them with their bags and making sure their day goes as smoothly as possible. But beyond that, there is an underlying respect for these senior citizens that comes from being raised in the Yupik culture. After the shopping is done, it's back on the bus and homeward bound. For the next couple of hours, Bernard will drive these senior citizens back to their homes, assisting those who need help into their homes, and eventually Bernard will go home himself and get a good night's sleep for a busy day tomorrow. For these elders, the Eddie Hoffman Senior Center is more than a place to socialize and build puzzles. It's an important part of their daily lives and is appreciated more than words can describe.
It's good to hang out with these people because when we stay home by ourselves, the day is really long, you know. Shorten our day, come up and eat, and then we come back. And we were lucky because they always take us to post office, get our mail. They help us out to pay all our bills. They let us go here and then and let us pay all our bills. I'm grateful for that because they help us out. We are lucky to have the senior center here in Bethel, you know.
And we are even luckier to have these elders with us today, sharing their knowledge and wisdom of life, the Yupik and Chupik way.
The elders are the heart and soul of cultures everywhere in the world.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us for Heartbeat Alaska Native News and Native Information. It really is a pleasure being invited into your home. I love making Heartbeat Alaska. And and I love you too. I meet so many neat people everywhere I go, even shopping in cars, that say, Jeannie, thank you for that show. Well, thank you for joining us. You're the whole reason we make this program. God bless you. And join me again next week for more Heartbeat Alaska. We'll see you then.
It's Heartbeat Alaska.